I'm Steve Johnson, News Director of theDove TV. Watch more videos from the Dove Newsroom at thedove.us.
Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and we're delighted to have back with us today Scott Jorgensen. He is a legislative staffer, author, former reporter, and he's up there at the state capitol in Salem giving us an update as now our legislature is trying to wrap up this session, and there are some key things that are going on up there. Hi, Scott. How you doing? Good to see you again.
Good morning. Yeah, there's been some pretty long days and late nights, but we're definitely, the end is near.
Where do you think you'll sine die? How soon?
The original projection was the end of June, but the last day, the constitutionally mandated date for sine die is July 11th, and I hope that it's probably somewhere between the 4th and the 11th. I have to be in a wedding and over on the southern Washington coast on July 11th, so I really hope it's before that.
Well, we'll see how it comes out. All right, a couple things that are hot on the table here. The Oregon Supreme Court now has reversed the decision by the 2013 legislature to modify PERS, and this could literally cost us $1 billion. What's going on with this?
That was a $1 billion decision. What happened was during the 2013 regular session, there were some ongoing discussions about PERS reform. The Republicans wanted to reform PERS, the Democrats wanted tax increases, and nothing came of it during the session, but the negotiations continued during the interim, and we ended up doing a special session in the fall of 2013, and that was referred to as the grand bargain. And politically, former Governor Kitzhaber really needed to do something like that. As you'll remember, and as I'm sure your son would remember, the first time he was governor, the special sessions that he called were disastrous. They were unproductive, arguably even counterproductive. They went on for a really long time. And so the special session in 2013, where they passed, PERS reforms and some changes to the tax code, it went very smoothly. But the state Supreme Court ruled that most of the PERS reforms, 90% of them, were unconstitutional. And the real impact of that is going to be at the local level. The PERS contributor rates have been set for the biennium that we're budgeting for now, 2015 to 2017. And by contributors, I mean local school districts, cities, counties. So it isn't going to hit this budget cycle, but come 2017-19, it's going to be a big deal.
Wow. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Wow. In the meantime, there is a proposal to renovate the Capitol. And this is interesting. As you know, former State Senator Jason Atkinson said, why don't we just polish it and clean it up? Now there's a proposal to actually renovate it. Is this a good deal when schools need money?
Well, the figures, the last remodel was done after the 2007 session. And the total cost of that, when you include the debt financing, was around $45.5 million. And that was done through the use of a couple of 15-year bonds. We still owe $24 million on that. And arguably, those renovations were needed. For example, the carpeting on the Senate floor, as your son would know, was this hideous bright orange color, and it was from the 1970s. And so they pulled that out, and they professionalized a lot of the office space used by legislators. So the plan now, the original cost was estimated at $250 million. That's now gone up 35% to $337 million. By the time you include the interest and everything else, we're looking at almost $600 million.
Oh, and that would be on top of the 24 that's still owed?
That's correct. And this plan includes 4,700 square foot cafe, 2,500 square foot space for lobbyists, 3,000 square foot lounge for legislators, 1,600 square foot facility for the press. The total figures here are that we have 275 schools in Oregon that are at high risk of an earthquake. 500 are at moderate risk. There are 9 over on the coast that are in tsunami inundation zones. And the total is that the estimate, and this was done by the Department of Geologic and Mineral Industries, DOGAMI, 1,575 schools statewide would not withstand an earthquake.
Well, where do you think this is going to go?
So what typically happens with these kinds of projects, and the planning, the designing, the architecture and all that was included in what you would call a Christmas tree bill. And there's negotiations going on right now for capital construction projects. And what they do is they stuff a bunch of things into one bill to where you don't vote on these things individually. And so you get a proposal like this included, but you're a legislator, and it also includes funding for projects in your district. So it's all or nothing at that point. And so you can either vote against, the capital construction project, but you would also be voting against projects in your district. And so it makes it really hard to vote against it, which is exactly why it's done that way.
All right. Well, we'll see how that comes up. All right. Former Governor John Kitzhaber's issues are still kind of shadowing there in the Capitol in this session. And I understand now it may include some nepotism. What's going on?
Well, the thing is that after he'd resigned, it got quiet. It got back to business as usual. But in the last few weeks, there have been some articles. The Washington Times came out with one, and it detailed what's going on at the national level. And it confirmed that the day he resigned, he got a letter from members of Congress saying, yes, we are investigating the $300 million of federal funds that were spent through Cover Oregon. And he and his staff had maintained all along that it was Oracle's fault, that we're going to blame them for this whole fiasco. But documents are coming to light that show that they could have had a working exchange back in February, but the decision was made for purely political purposes for the sake of getting him reelected by members of his campaign staff, as it were, to pull the plug on it and join up with the federal exchange, which also has costs associated with it. And so the members of Congress also weren't too thrilled that members of the campaign staff were coaching a witness who went to testify before them as to where this money went. They also weren't too happy with the attempts to delete emails off of the state server.
Now, his nephew was tied up in this one?
Yeah, so Willamette Week did a story a few weeks back, and it was about the whistleblower. And it was the state official who got that request. Hey, would you guys mind deleting all these thousands of emails off of the state server? And he felt like he had nowhere to go. He said, okay, well, I could go to the state police, but they're under his jurisdiction. I could go to the Government Ethics Commission, but Kitzhaber appointed all those guys. I could go to the courts, but they're also political appointees. And so he released it to Willamette Week and did everybody in the state a huge service by doing so. Well, what happened was he was rewarded for his efforts by a perp walk out of his building. And he's on paid leave right now, but during business hours, he can't leave his house, and his career could very well be ruined. So this article came out detailing that, and one of the things was that the Marion County District Attorney's Office had threatened him if he didn't resign his position with 6,000 counts of official misconduct, one for every email that he leaked. Well, it turned out that Kitzhaber's nephew, his literal actual nephew, which is, by the way, the dictionary definition of nepotism, right, was derived from that, works for that office. And that story came out a week later, and public sentiment prevailed in this case because the public was on this guy's side. He had a lot of support. Representative Newt Buehler spoke about it on the House floor. An account was set up for his legal defense, and it came out that the decision was made to not prosecute him for releasing these emails. So that was a bit of good news to come out of here.
Wow. Well, it still lingers around. Well, listen, thank you, Scott, for what you guys are doing up there. I hope you do get out by the end of the month, but things always linger. The budget pretty much wrapped up, or do you expect something to come out to increase funding for education?
Well, that's all tied to the kicker, because we did get the last revenue forecast, and it shows that the state has $2 billion more in revenue than it's ever had at any point in time. because the projections had been different than what was originally forecast a while ago, Oregonian taxpayers are due to receive kicker refunds. I, for one, would really like to have that. But there were a lot of bills filed before the start of the session that redirect the kicker and repurpose it in different forms for education. So I think that's a fight that's probably going to be happening in the next few weeks as we attempt to bolster the education budget. But a lot of the smaller budgets are coming through. The state has all kinds of boards and commissions and things like that. So the Senate's going to be voting on several of those bills today, and they'll pass without much fanfare. So the process is moving along.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Good to see you again. Keep up the good work. We'll check back in before you wrap it up there.
Sounds great, Mr. Atkinson.
Okay, see you later. All right, Perry. All right, we'll be right back.